Now, it's always going to help if I put myself on the screen. Good morning to you. Good morning, Portugal. Munson here from expatsportugal.com. Wishing you a very good day. And hola, bon dia, alegria from me, as from many in the comments from our community this morning. Tarlock's here. The Doc, Andy's here. Hank is here. Wealth Creation Academy. And Hank Stelica. Light them up, says Hank. And it's Places and Spaces Thursday today. Very special guest for you. A young woman entrepreneur who I was very impressed to see in front of me on the internet one day. I thought I've got to get this lady on the screen with me probably on our Places and Spaces feature Thursdays, talking about property. And of course, today it is the best places to rent and buy in Portugal, with the added bonus of Anna Caramujo from Savvy Cat Realty. Good morning to you, Anna. How are you today?
Good morning, Carl. So thank you so much for inviting me. It's great to be here. So yeah, you picked the best places to buy and rent in Portugal. So how you want to start around this?
Well, I want to start by finding out a little bit more about you. As I said, I was very impressed when I saw you speaking. I think it was probably on social media, and I really like the way you went about it. The name of your company is very cool, Savvy Cat Realty, and I watched a couple of your videos, and you really seem to know what you're talking about. Certainly, you know, Portugal is your native country, and it sounds like property has been in the family for a couple of generations now. So why don't we start there, and you tell us about yourself and how you got into this and why you called it Savvy Cat.
Oh, that one is very easy. I'm a crazy cat lady. and the savvy part is because I believe it's very important to be business savvy when investing in property. So you have to be smart. You have to look into the market, and you have to know what you want to do with that property. If you want it for business purpose to get return, if you want it for living, how long are you willing to take until you get it full paid? Because there's a very big difference in between liabilities and assets, and it's not that hard for properties to turn into liabilities if you don't play your cards right.
Yes, indeed.
So that's the savvy part, because I enjoy to work with savvy people that do want to get the most out of their money. And that's particularly important to me because there's a huge gap in the Portuguese markets when it comes to foreign investors, and they often get taken advantage of because the prices here are quite low, but many people are used to much higher prices where they come from. So they get offered things way above the normal market rates, and they don't know and end up accepting it. And it drives up the prices ridiculously, to be honest, and it makes things rather prohibitive for the locals and for people that, you know, are inside the Portuguese economy. Yeah. So that's a gap that needs to be fought, and the only ones that are winning in this are the agents and contractors that are trying to skyrocket the prices.
I see, yes, and that's why people might need somebody like you, a buyer's agent, who says, hold on a minute, this property was 100,000 last week. My foreign investor comes along and suddenly it's 150. What's going on here? And then you can negotiate a better deal for them, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I call chic expertismo here in Portugal, like people trying to get money into their pockets and not really, adding value for the other person. And that's terrible business ethics. That's something that definitely needs to improve here in Portugal, is business ethics. It should be much more valued, because if the relationship is balanced and everyone involved gets value, it's actually beneficial for everyone, because the business stays in business for longer because it gets good ratings, and the economy stays stable because everyone is getting their parts on the business relationship. So business ethics is something that definitely is very important for me.
That's what I loved about what you said. I remember now, you were talking about basically revolutionizing the Portuguese real estate industry, which I think is quite important. Now, to be fair, I understand why local people might want to charge a bit more. This has been a tough decade for people. And, when they've got a property asset, perhaps the biggest sale they'll make, in their life, and the greatest asset that they'll trade with. You can understand why people do this, but I think you're right. If you take a long-term view, it's not good for the country, really, is it? The perception of the country and the perception of the real estate industry in Portugal. So I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah, it can be very beneficial, of course, on a short term. Let's take Porto, for example. I lived in Porto for quite a while, and I did high school there. Of course, at the time, property wasn't my biggest concern. Teenagers, that was definitely not what was on my mind, but I did notice what was going on, like, at the time. So this is 15 years ago. You could buy one of those typical three-floor houses in Porto for something like 50K.
Yeah.
And in truth, Porto was very degraded and have a lot of abandoned real estate, and was a very gray city. There was very bad areas with high crime rates, and the prices were cheap. But then it started getting a lot of foreign investment and interest. The tourism grew exponentially. And now those properties that used to cost 50K get sold sometimes for over 500K. So you can see the huge, 10 times value in a period of 15 years.
Wow.
And of course, that was extremely beneficial for the city in a way, because now the city is much more recovered and there's almost none of those high crime areas. It's overall very safe to walk around the city.
Yeah.
And it's much better looking because lots of things are getting recovered. There are still some properties that are not recovered, but they are no longer the majority in many of the areas. So it was very beneficial for the city, that foreign interest. But the fact is, now a lot of people can't afford property in Porto, even though they were living there all their lives.
Yep, that's a terrible thing when that happens. Happened in Lisbon, of course, didn't it? And there are other places it's happening. I guess Aveiro might be another example. And we don't want to do that. That, again, long term just creates a bad taste in the mouth, doesn't it? So all about balance, I guess. And this is all factored into your approach here with Savvy Cat Realty. And I imagine we'll go into a few of the other pitfalls and difficulties with the Portuguese approach to real estate. Maybe the photos, we'll talk about the photos as well, because sometimes they can be unrepresentative and unhelpful. But actually,
yes.
you're here to talk about the best places to rent and buy in Portugal. We've got a lovely crowd here this morning who want to say hi. Greetings from Harrogate. That's a place in Yorkshire, in case you don't know. Anna, Paul's there. Not quite the same as Portugal, but May is not far away, and that wonderful Portugal weather will be upon us. It's looking out of my window. I'm feeling it.
It's sunny today.
It's beautiful, isn't it? What part of the country are you in today, Anna?
I'm in Caldas.
Caldas de Rainha. Love that part of Portugal. Very beautiful. And we have a few friends from our community over that way. The sun shines in Berlin as well, apparently, this morning. Eric's checked in, Eric Willingham, but not quite Ferragudo, of course. Bon dia to you. I is here in it, says Gary, from the Al Viagra gang over there. He sounds a little bit menacing this morning, but he's a nice fella, believe me. Jean van de Beek from France, bon dia. You mentioned Porto. Joel is up there in Matosinhos, which I think is a bit of a boom place at the moment. A woman after my own heart, says Hank Stallica already. You've made a friend here, Anna. Bon dia from the brilliant blue skies of Povor de Vargim. Again, another underrated, excellent place in the north. Bon dia from Moscow this morning, from Carolyn in Russia. So Anna's service is a win-win, says Hank, for expats and for locals. I'm a fan already. And Gary says, yeah, what gringo prices is what he's calling that phenomenon.
Yeah, true.
Where there's a big markup suddenly before you know it. Bon dia, tourish. The birds are singing in Atlanta this morning. I'm so glad to hear that over there in Atlanta, Georgia, with Victoria. I don't mind selling the shed I live in, but not own, for 50,000. So this is exactly the sort of thing we're trying to get rid of, Joel. Stop it. He's only kidding, though. However, that'll be cheap for a shed in London, where I've come from. A shed would be turned into a 3-bedroom house and sold for, I don't know, 500,000. Katrina C, bon dia to you. Katrina Mukushva Bon is here as well with a bon dia, raising a glass possibly already this morning. Regardless of country, buyer beware. I'm sure you'd agree with that, Anna. Mark Rigby, in terms of the perception of foreigners bidding up the prices in the market, the first question for you, to what extent is that the result of, 1, foreigners becoming permanent residents, 2, foreigners buying holiday homes, 3, foreign investors / investor companies, or 4, lack of supply in terms of additions to housing stock? Probably a little bit of all of those. What do you reckon?
It's a little bit of all of those, but I think the main culprit, it's actually Portuguese chic espertismo. So it's people literally taking advantage of the lack of knowledge of the internal market displayed by foreign investors. So lots of people, I actually been talking to a lot of Americans, and they tell me about how the real estate market works there and how the prices are there, especially in the high demand areas. And it's just crazy. Like, it's normal to pay like 1 million, 2 million for houses. And that's not normal here. So they come here and they find these amazing properties on the coast, or, you know, there's amazing places here. And it can be half the price they would expect there. And they find that a great deal, but it's still extremely overpriced for Portugal standards. But of course, the person selling, if they can sell it for 1 million, they will try to. So that's basically what happens.
Amazing. Okay, and we need to get your contact details as well. And I think as Expats Portugal, we need to work more closely with you for sure. And I really like what you're saying this morning. Popo, if you look at the whole European zone, house prices have gone up in the last year. In Germany, some areas up 30% and more. Portugal, I read yesterday, some areas up 10%. It's a seller's market currently. So could you address that as well? Because people are saying pandemic effect, you know, the property market's going to crash. It's not true so far, is it?
It depends a lot on the location, because the truth is the pandemic made people stay in their homes a lot more. So they started valuing their space inside the house more, because people that were living in the small apartments in the city suddenly started feeling a bit trapped. And the interest in bigger houses skyrocketed. I remember reading a report on this. So the areas that are like a mix of city life and country with big spaces and affordable prices got super crowded. Like, everyone wanted to go and buy, of course, everyone that could afford it. So the prices started rising on those locations. And I think the reason that didn't happen as much here in Portugal is for 2 reasons, actually. So one of them is the border stayed closed for a very long time, and COVID management wasn't the best. So it got put on a few blacklists in terms of travel from other countries. So that made things harder for people that wanted to buy here. And the other thing is that people that are leisure investors, that are people that have the money available and prefer to have the least headaches possible, so the price isn't really their main concern, aren't really present at the market right now because, well, it's not a safe time, when their priority is comfort and safety, they
Yes.
won't be as present in the market right now. So that kind of investors are stepping out for now. And those kinds of investors were the investors that were driving the prices the most in Portugal. And the
Okay.
fact is, it comes again down to Portuguese chic espertismo. So basically, here we have an expression that is atirar o barro à parede. So basically, it means to throw the clay to the wall to see if it sticks. So
Yes.
that's what people do with prices. They put what they want to ask, but not really what it's worth.
Okay.
So now people are not paying that, so the prices are coming down because most people that are investing now do more research, or either are locals. Actually, the locals buying houses increased very much in the past year. I actually was looking into it myself because I sold my property in the Algarve before the pandemic, and I was thinking about buying, and I contact the bank to see how things were, and they told me that the applies the people applying for mortgages increased like 80%, like it almost doubled.
Interesting.
Yes, and the thing is that happened because people realized that foreign investment was going to stay away for a while, and sellers started accepting the fairer offers that are more in tune with the local market economy. So I think that's the main reason why the prices went down, because the prices just started to be more in tune with the local market, because the local market is what is the most active right now.
Very interesting. I didn't know that. I mean, what I'd heard is that it's still fairly strong. But it's the rental market that's collapsed. That's down 15-20% in some places because people can't let out their Airbnbs, etc. Do you find that as well?
That's a very curious thing. The Airbnbs, that is the special regime that's called the alojamento local. So it's usually written as AL.
Yeah.
So AL is a very curious regimen. So it's made to short-term rentals. In order to rent for less than, I don't know if it's 30 or 60 days, you have to have the AL regime. And it has a few disadvantages from the owner perspective, but it started being extremely popular for holiday rentals exactly because of the increase in tourism in Portugal.
Mm.
And this regime, I think it was only made about 7 years ago, something like that, because people started doing it anyway, and the government realized that they were technically putting themselves pair with hotels offering the same kind of service, but much lower. So the government created a special housing regime to cover that kind of situation. That's the AL. So the AL, from the owner's perspective, you have to get a license, and your house will basically be a business. And you will be paying the bills like electricity and water as business, and that's much higher than the regular housing, the personal bills
Yes.
tax. That's already high, as you know.
Yes.
And another curious thing is that to remove your AL property from the AL regime, you have to pay retrofit on all the profit you made so far with it.
Good.
So
Okay, so people really need to know about this, because you might think to yourself,
Yes.
I'm going to go to Portugal, buy an amazing place. We're going to have a couple of other plots, or there might be other buildings that you're going to let out Airbnb, but this could be the possible pitfall in the long term.
Yes, so that's what's happening in the AL right now, because people can take it out because they don't want to pay the retrofit. And many people just jumped into the AL without really making that much plans. And
Yes.
they took loans and all that kind of thing, and now they're kind of screwed. So they are trying to, get something out of it. So they either are trying to sell it as AL, or they are trying to rent it for a price that the locals would accept. So yeah, it's a curious
It sure is.
phenomena, because everyone was jumping on it a few years ago. I even got advice to do it for my property in Algarve, and I refused because I knew it was going to blow up sooner or later, and it did. So I'm
Well,
very glad I did.
well, you've obviously
And
sort of knack and insight in this industry. That's why you're here this morning. Anna Caramujo is here from Savvy Cat Realty, a buyer's agent, essentially, as I understand it, talking about, we haven't even got there yet, but we're talking about the best places. We're doing a bit of background at the moment, and we've got a lot of people in saying hi, including Dennis Rasmussen, good morning, and Jill Davis from Scotland this morning. Maxine is here as well. Bon dia, counting the days. Flights are booked. Yay! You managed to get a flight. That's unusual. I think the UK could learn from the Portuguese regarding home purchase. I often hear that the other way around. Tell us more, Maxine. Bon dia from New Zealand, from Project Frugal. Project Frugal will be our guests next Thursday, I'm delighted to say. Jersey's here. Hola, bon dia from United States. Bon dia on the exercise bike this morning is Penny. Bon dia from Mike Campion. Let the fun begin from Maastricht this morning. Bon dia from beautiful Tessera, from Donna. Hello to you, Donna. How's it going? Bon dia from sunny Stockholm this morning from Anna Olsen. And from Jose Barroso, good morning from London, with a nice thumbs up there. Atansky Rock Max, didn't realize that's how you pronounce Alvazar, Carl. It is occasionally. I'll never make that mistake again. Well done there, Atansky. Good morning, everyone from Gemini. Hank asking a property-related question. So get those in. We are talking about property and rentals, buying and renting this morning. Best places we'll get round to eventually. There was no housing price crash in Wuhan or other cities with other SARS outbreaks before COVID. I was surprised to see that in my research, says Hank. Ahmed is here. Good morning from Egypt. Oh, nice to hear from Egypt this morning. There are cheap properties, in inverted commas, with the bunny ears there for sale, but many, if not all of them, need investment in renovations. That alone also increases the price in total cost. That's something we must talk about this morning, the amount of property that needs doing up in Portugal. Good morning from a very sunny Torres Vedras. Glad to hear it, Susan. Let's face it, says Bon Dia from Virginia. I wonder what your sort of YouTube channel that is. Let's face it. But good morning to you in Virginia in the US. Suzanne Derringer, good morning. Just woke up. 5 a.m. here. Good effort. We thought it was an early morning for us, didn't we, Anna? But it's 5 a.m. over there for Suzanne. We'll watch later. Good info, she says. Bon dia, sunny Malveira here. Chico Espertismo, clever dickism in my experience of. Oh, okay, so that's the actual translation. The Chico Espertismo, clever dick. In my experience of 25 years in Portugal, a lot of people are tempted by the quick buck and don't see the advantage of long-term business relationships. Probably a Latin thing, not just Portugal. Oh, I say a racial stereotype. What do you think of buying off plan? A great question for Mark. We'll come back to that. I watched the Portugal housing market on a daily schedule, says Paul. The big word that's coming to light is reduced. And Lisa, who's also in the business, Lisa Boys, in the market is very different. Houses that have been renovated and those that are still in traditional Portuguese house, you can still get a bargain. But you're right, Carl, the renting market is a difficult market. Best to know people locally, isn't it, with that sort of thing. Jani from Belgium. Anna, I have a question about IMT. I know the table for calculation, but what about rural property? Does that have a flat rate of 5% and is much, much cheaper? But how much is deductible from the property value in this case? We're going to get lost if we don't answer some of these questions. So yes, what was that? What was the earlier question we had? Maybe you could do that while I find the questions buried in all the lovely comments that are coming in. Can you explain with this thing, IMT? And we still haven't got around to the best places.
Okay, so IMT is the Portuguese transmission tax. So when you buy property, there's a transmission tax between, passing the property from one person to the other. And that tax is called EMT, and you pay it when you do the escritura. So when you finalize the buying act. And sorry, I don't remember what the viewer name was. So on the
Jenny in Belgium.
I'm sorry, I stopped hearing you for a while. I don't know what's up.
I don't know if you can hear me now, but Jani in Belgium has had that question for EMT.
Okay. So Jamie, that's it. Sorry. Anyway, as he said, there is different taxes, and there's a table that's on my website about that. For rural property, the tax is a fixed tax, but rural property is much, much, much cheaper than, urban property. I actually have quite a few rural terrains that I inherited from my father. And I have terrains that have like, I don't know, 700, 1,000 square meters, 2,000 square meters, and they will be worth something like 100 euros a square meter, especially in the rural areas. That will be a normal price. So the flat rate that you pay on those kind of terrains, it's going to be pretty low because the prices on the terrains itself is pretty low. And what was I going to say? No, I forgot. I don't know. I'll come back. I know. It's basically if the terrain is set just as rural terrain, you cannot build on it. Only if it's either urban and rural mix or just urban. Because if it's just rural, you will not be able to build on it. So pay attention to that.
Okay. All right. And the question she was asking is, how much is deductible from the property value in this case? So I guess she's trying to negotiate out the EMT value.
I think there's no deductible for rural terrains.
Okay, all right, fair enough. And then the other question from Mark: what do you think of buying off plan? Would you do such a thing?
It's a tricky thing because, of course, you'll be getting a better rate because things will still take a while to be ready, but then you'll have to be submitted to the will of the company that is constructing it. So it will depend a lot. If they will stay on plan, it may take longer. You have to pay attention to if they actually keep up with the quality of the construction they promised. So it can be advantageous, but you have to be careful with the company you're going into business with to make sure that you do get your part in it and, get your property over like 1-2 years, because it may end up taking a lot longer, and Portuguese companies are known for dragging their feet.
Okay, something to watch out for and a bit of due diligence on the company there, Mark. Mike, interesting topic. Thank you, Mike. We would look at to rent initially before buying. Take our time to explore and find the right property at the right price. However, based on my experience as an active trader in the financial markets, real economic impacts of COVID are yet to be realized. I think you're right, Mike. And we may have some surprises there. Once furlough schemes and governmental support ends or tapers to an end, businesses and individuals are likely to struggle again, having an impact. Governments cannot go on printing money forever, despite the Fed, and that's a recent thing. We're watching that with interest, aren't we? We've had some interesting conversations about governments printing money, but I think you're absolutely right, Mike, and that sounds like a good strategy. Question from Gary for you, Anna. What are the best tips for new people coming from abroad? Go show local people what they want to engage with, the local community to get away from the traditional stereotypes and show we want to make a longer term investment in the Portuguese way of life, other than large sums of money for house purchases. Okay, so what I get from that is how to make good local relationships. So you're not getting charged the gringo price, and that to make it clear that this. I mean, a lot of us feel this way. I think on Good Morning Portugal is we're not in this for a quick buck. Obviously, there's a great advantage and many great advantages in coming to Portugal, but it's not just about us winning. It's about seeing that obviously if you come to a country, you need to be respectful, open-minded, and have a greater sense of investment. And you know, it's a win-win, so that you create a longer-term relationship, like you were talking about before, Anna. How do you get that across to agents and to vendors of houses? Is that a growing thing? Are even native people looking for that from a buyer, or don't they care?
Mostly people will have that stereotype that foreign people have money,
Yeah.
and they will have a tendency to try and get the most out of it. But of course, it all comes down to the personal and the person and the ethics on that person, and whether they are actually interested in getting to know you or
Yeah.
just interested in getting your money.
Okay, so I think go out for lunch with them. Go for a prato do dia and find out. Possibly is the way to do that. And you need a little bit of help on the ground, a little bit like, or a lot like Anna here, who can make that clear to your vendors as well. Bon dia a todos from Michelle. Good morning to you, Michelle. This is good advice from Popo. Had my bank evaluate the house before putting an offer in. Best €210 spent. Also convinced the seller to reduce their price. But then I had an approved credit already, my bank, so the sale only took a few days. That's unusual as well, isn't it, Anna? These processes can take a very long time in Portugal.
Not really. It depends a lot on how much of a good candidate you are from the bank's perspective. So if they see that you are very likely to keep your end, they will approve it much faster.
Yeah.
And it would depend on how much proof you provide of that. But overall, the bank also has interest in moving the process fast because they get money from it.
Yes, of course. Of course. Brilliant. All right. So Jose Barroso, buy rent prices went down due to the pandemic and all its effects, such as people returning to their country. Lots of English friends from London planning investing in Portugal. Quite right too. So let's get specific now then. Best value for money in the Algarve. Would this be in your best places to buy and rent in Portugal, Anna?
The Algarve is the crown jewel of Portuguese tourism. So as it is, it has driven a lot of foreign interest, and it's actually one of the places where the prices are inflated the most, and there is the most steep difference between the local market and the foreign-oriented market.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say be very careful with the Algarve, because people are used to actually getting away with driving prices up. It is a great place, and there's actually places that we call kind of the British communities that are more foreign, especially British people there, than actually locals, and that's kind of funny. So you can see how much interest there is in the Algarve from a foreign perspective.
Yes.
And that comes to play with everything we talked about so far. So the people try their luck and know they have more buying power than the locals, so they will try to sell you things for a higher price than it's actually worth. When it comes to places where it's easier in a way to find affordable property, I'd say that's probably the inner Algarve and the small villages. If you go to bigger cities like, Portimão, Albufeira, Monte Gordo, those kind of places will always have much higher prices because they are much more on demand, and they are very popular on expat communities. And there's also an area that is very known for being extremely expensive, that is Quinta do Lago. That's where most of the golf resorts are.
Yeah.
And the prices there are just mind-blowing. From an inside perspective, I just go like, 3 million, and I'm like, how is that possible? Like,
Yes.
it's not something, if anyone in Portugal within the local market, no one would be able to afford that.
That's so totally exclusive. So your tip for the Algarve then is to go a bit further into the interior perhaps and look for small village life, and you could get yourself a bargain there.
It's much easier to get yourself a bargain there, and also in less dense areas. So in the small villages between the cities, you can still get pretty good deals. But I would say to look into renovating, because most of the already renovated properties tend to have terrible cosmetic renovations that just look good but are not good at all and will end up costing a lot more in the long term because they have terrible energy certificates and terrible isolation, and the materials themselves aren't good, so they will start falling apart and getting humidity and getting a lot of problems very quickly. So be very careful with pre-renovated properties because that is a standard, unfortunately. And it's much, most of the properties renovated are like that. It's very, very rare to find an actual good renovation.
Amazing. So they've just been done up to get them on the market for a quick sale. Watch out for that, folks. That's really good advice, Anna. Thank you. Hank, how stable can we expect property prices to remain over the next couple of years? Or is it too hard to foresee? What do you reckon, Anna?
Of course, this will be a bit of an educated guess. No one can tell exactly if it's going to happen or not. But I would say they will keep dropping until something like September, because lots of people have been getting by and doing their best to try and keep their own property, and the economy hasn't been very well for a local perspective. Businesses related to especially tourism and restaurant and bar industry are floored. So especially when it comes to business property, right now it's a huge opportunity because there's lots of businesses that aren't making it and they want to get some cash back, so they are trying to sell the properties fast. So there's a huge opportunity in the business market. And on the housing market, the prices are also lowering because of the same reason: people that can't afford to keep their houses and eventually decide to sell it to try and figure out a solution in the meantime. And that, I think that will keep driving the prices down, and also because of the AL, people selling their ALs, that keep driving the prices down until I'd say like September, October. And I think the borders will open somewhere around June. They will probably start opening in May, but people will only be allowed to come in June. And when that happens, the prices will start to slowly rise again. So I think right now there's a very good window for investing because the prices are still low and are probably going to hang out a bit. You just have to be smart and make offers. Don't just take the prices that are listed, because as I said, they are trying to sell for the price they want. It's not really the price they're worth. I actually know some of my ex-tenants in Porto just left a few months after the pandemic, and they got accepted an offer on the same street that our building is in, and that's in central Porto, and they bought a 2-bedroom villa in that street. And that villa was listed for 350K. They made an offer for 214, and it was accepted.
Wow.
So
okay.
that's what I said with throwing the clay to the wall Portuguese thing.
Yes, there are lovely Portuguese turns of phrase. Thank you for treating us to some this morning. This is amazing. Loving your analysis. Thank you. Good morning to you, Peter, who's paving a lawn, paving paradise and putting up a parking lot by the sound of it. Lisa, thank you so much for your input on the IMT, EMT thing in the comments as well. Lots of excellent comments and questions. Bon dia, Turush. Yes, it's sad, but we all don't live forever, so property is the same. It needs to be deductible, I think, and give it value. Wish humans can be the same. A bit of philosophy there. So we all need work in life to become better and live with. God rest of this new day. Oh, yes, a good rest of day to everybody from Dennis Rasmussen. When it's just rural, I've seen places where you can buy a temporary home. What constitutes a temporary home, and what is the duration you can stay in it? Do you get this a lot, Anna? People who want to live the good life and the hippie-ish sort of lifestyle and want to live on a bit of land, but actually they can't. What's the way around that?
If you buy just a rural land, you won't be able to officially do water and electricity connections. So it's going to be tricky. So you would have to have a mixed land. And the things with the purely rural lands, it's because they are in usually zones that are predetermined for agricultural purposes.
Right.
So you can't really go around that unless the local town hall changes its zoning laws.
Okay, so check with the camera about that. I mean, you'll get people telling you, yeah, you can put a yurt up on that or whatever, as people do.
No, not advisable.
You've got to speak to the camera, haven't you? Otherwise, you find yourself in some trouble. Bon dia, todos, from the man like Frank Devane, our Monday man, who takes us on the food tour of Portugal. Very popular, him and his Francesinha, which you probably experienced. Are you a fan of the Francesinha when you're in Porto?
I do like it to eat it sometimes, but it's not one of my favorite foods because it's very heavy and my, digesting system doesn't agree with it.
We noticed. Advice from Paul: go to your local bar. More free information comes from locals, and information is unbiased and not working for profit. Plus, you can have a nice drink. It's true, but you will get the mud sticking to the wall approach. I got a rental from a guy in a cafe. Or the cafe owner said you should speak to this guy. This guy phoned us up, took us to a property. Can we do this here? Yeah. Will this lady have moved out by the time we get here? Yeah. Is it both houses? Yeah. What, for 400 euros? Yeah. Can we rent the other one out? Yeah. You could do anything you like here. You get there. The lady hasn't moved out. You can't rent it out. The water's not even switched on at night. You have to be so careful. I totally get your point, Paul.
Yes.
You know, Portuguese BFFs are absolutely spot on, but definitely get somebody who's working on your side. I think that's the key there. Lots of Londoners moving or buying second properties in Devon since pandemic, prices rising and availability of property reducing. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? When we have that area of a home and a house being an investment as well as where people actually live, there's always going to be this problem, I think. Mark Walker: are there typical methods of hedging against currency exchange rates when buying off plan, as the payments are made over a long time? Talk to Spartan FX, who will be with us next Tuesday. But have you got a comment on that? You must have. If you're dealing with Americans, what do you advise them on the currency side, Anna?
Actually, there is. I advise using apps like TransferWise, that now it's just Wise, and Revolut. As someone that buys a lot for other currencies, because I'm kind of a crazy online shopper, I love those things. It's huge, and it saved me a lot of money on currency exchange. And they have different tiers. I think Revolut has like a paid option, and it allows you to transfer huge sums of money, and you will still get their conversion rates that are much lower than the banks. And as you know, the banks sometimes have crazy taxes on that. Yeah. So you can use those kind of apps to make this kind of things, and it can save you a huge lot of money.
Okay, and on Tuesday, we've got Ben of Spartan FX joining us. We spoke to his colleague Sarah the other day. This, as far as your question goes, Mark, about the staging of when and to take advantage of the best exchange rates over a long period of time, Ben will be someone to put that question to. I believe it's Tuesday of next week. Yes, it is Tuesday. Lisa saying Sagres is still untapped market and some bargains there also. So you've given us some of your best place intel as far as the Algarve goes, and you've talked about Porto, and people know about Lisbon, of Aveiro. Where haven't we spoken about? What's a really good tip from you, Anna, about a place people might not have heard about, where they're going to get a nice place to live and a pretty good bargain too at the moment?
I think it depends. The whole good deal depends a lot on the personal interest of the person. So if you are looking to a nice place in the middle of nature, and you maybe do some retreats there, or just enjoy yourself, I would say to go into the Douro and Alentejo areas, because you will have like huge bargains there. You can find property for under 50K, but it will require renovating or constructing, and that can be a whole other headache. But I actually include that in my services, since I do have a lot of experiences with dealing with renovations and licensings and all of that from my family property, and I know how tricky that can be. I do include that on all my price points. So up to 6 months after the escritura is made, I do consulting on the renovating or building and screening for possible contractors. So you can have huge deals going by like this, and you actually can find grants for that too. If you renovate old properties and improve their quality and energy certification for, I don't know if it's 3 or 5 or 4 levels, there is grants for that. And there's also in the cities, there's areas called RU, so there's the rehabilitation urban areas.
Yeah.
And those also can apply for those rents, and they have a whole lot of tax advantages. So you get reduced taxes on sale and renting, and you have exemption from EME for up to 10 years.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. That's a really great tip. So if you start looking on the Douro for these properties that Anna's talking about, 50k plus the renovation cost in the Douro or the Alentejo, you're still going to need someone to help you, like Anna and like Peter and Alice, who we work with in our business directory of the Portugal company. So you go to these places and you see property in need of renovation, but it's so frustrating because you don't know where to start, do you? So I could live here, this is fantastic, but how on earth do you get a road in? How do you do the negotiation? And I think that's making the case for buyers agents like yourself, Anna, and to work in conjunction, with a professional who knows the local market, and not just for the house purchases, as you say, but for the ongoing renovation thereafter. So it's so great you're doing what you're doing. Good morning from Helen in Thailand. Wow. Good morning from Frankfurt as well, from Wolfgang. It's a pleasure watching you. Very solid information. Thank you. Any advice as to finding hidden gems? So we got a couple of tips there. The Douro, one of the most beautiful places in the world. Let's face it, the Douro Valley. Underrated areas within 30 minutes to the west coast. Obrigado. So there's a little bit more of a steer on that question. 30 minutes to the west coast. I mean, Caldas, where you are, is a pretty good place to be looking, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Actually, I'm surprised with how high the prices are in Caldas. Of course, the agencies that are working with the foreign market have a whole lot different prices of the agencies that are working in the internal markets. So in the street I'm in, there's some small houses that still get sold for under the 100K. But if you go into the big agencies' windows, you see a lot of things for over 300K, which I would say it's not really on point with the local market. So it's still the, Portuguese trying to get advantage thing. But yeah, there is some great areas here. I know the Nazaré is very popular, and actually Peniche, which I find curious, I actually lived there when I was little, and it's very, very windy. And I'm surprised how popular it is. I know it's a big surfing community and wind sports and all that, but it has a lot of expats, and I was surprised to find that out.
Yeah, maybe they bought off plan. You can't get a sense of the wind when you buy off plan, can you? Do you approve of like Óbidos and Alcobaça, those towns as well on the Silver Coast?
I love Óbidos, but inside the villages, the prices are a bit crazy because it's that, charming medieval village.
Yes,
But
yes.
around that, you do get some regular prices and good opportunities. I don't know, that's a bit of a personal thing, but Óbidos have a bit of a weird energy. So for people that are sensitive to that, I wouldn't advise it too much.
Oh, I got to stop you there. You did describe yourself as a crazy cat lady, your own words, but you're also sensitive to the kind of geomancy and the feng shui and those sorts of things, are you? Do you deal in?
Yes, that's actually something it took me a long time to be comfortable admitting on a business, because it does kind of, lots of people find that, unprofessional and crazy.
Yeah.
But it comes down a lot to your personal beliefs. It's like religion. Personally, I do believe in energy, and I have level 2 Reiki.
Excellent.
So I have no problem in working with those sorts of things. But I'm also a very logical person, so I did have a very long time until I was able to conciliate these two sides of me, because they do seem like opposites. But I came to peace with, there are some things you cannot prove yet, but that doesn't mean that can't be proved in the future.
Well said. Well said. I mean, I live with an astrologer. I've done Reiki. She's done Reiki. We're on the same page here. I agree with you. It's about balance and a comprehensive view, isn't it? It doesn't have to be one or the other. But I love what you said. That it's not been proved yet. Very good. Maybe science will catch up one day.
I hope so.
That's
Yes, I
that's
do. I'm a firm believer in science.
okay, great. They just need to catch up. Okay, obrigado, Anna from Hank. Just my views. Sorry, cat among the pigeons, can of worms, etc. Great insight. I'm looking to buy in central Portugal. Good morning to you, Wealth Creation Academy. What I found, says Gary, my house, it was advertised at 114,000, but I wasn't in a position to buy by the time I sold my house in the UK, and the price had changed to 150. Wow, that's quite a hike. In the end, I paid the original price, but this included all the furniture, which is a very good quality. Probably got it for this price quickly because I was a cash buyer, so this can work both ways, really. That's a great story, Gary. Thank you for sharing that. Dennis, excellent info. Thank you. I'm looking to go to Portugal for a month. This is the thing to do. Come for a month. In 2 months' time. What pages besides Expats Portugal do you recommend for finding locations to rent for 30 or 60 days? We've got Spotter Home and Airbnb. You're going to get some bargains at the moment. Anything to add to that, Anna, for rentals?
Yeah, I actually just launched the service for rentals because I did realize it is also a huge necessity in the market. And I do understand that people want to come here and actually experience it for a while before they actually buy. Yeah. And it's very hard to get rentals. And I can tell you that both from a property owner and landlord perspective and from someone that has rented in the past. And the renting market can get a bit crazy. So I'm going to tell you a bit on how I rent my personal properties, because I think it has a lot of useful information that people can take out from. So I have a few places that we rent in Porto, and Porto is a big city with a lot of demand. And we like to rent long term because it gives us a whole lot of less headaches and don't have, tenants changing all the time and all of that.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, we obviously offer prices that are in tune with the local market, because we like to keep good relationship and things, people there for a longer time. So when I put ads up, sometimes I just go into a Facebook rental group and I say, I have this for this price. And within 12 hours, I will have like 20 people requesting a visitation. So it's a bit crazy because it's hard to find places that have fair prices. And when they do appear, everyone tries to jump on it. So I only do like visitations for 1 or 2 days, and then I pick the person that I think will stay longer and give me the least trouble. And things go like this. I literally leave the ad up for 1 day.
Yeah, amazing. So you're definitely in the rental market. You can help people, maybe do negotiations for them. We've got to get your website up on the screen. What is it? Is it savvycat.pt?
Yes, it's www.savvycatrealty.com.
Okay, I'll get that.
And the rental service I launched, it includes the location advisory and research. That's the phase 1. Then the phase 2 is visitation, and we will do the whole either video call or filming. And then phase 3 is contract and signing. I developed this with a lawyer based on my own rental contracts, and they are half in English. Well, it's both in English and in Portuguese, but like half the page in each language. And people will be able to sign it even if they're not here, as long as they sign with their own handwriting, so using a tablet or so. So we are able to secure the rentals even if the person isn't here.
Wow, you've thought of everything, I think, there. And also what we like the idea of, I think, Anna, is a phone call from you to the landlord saying, no, that's too expensive. My client is not going to be that, and the negotiating power that you might bring to it. Fantastic.
Well,
Wolfgang,
in the rentals, that's a bit harder because the market is very saturated. So it's harder to negotiate down with rentals because they tend to have a lot of offer. And it's actually a very bad sign if the rental stays in the market for too long, because it means one of two things.
yes.
Either the landlord is making unreasonable demands, like asking for 6 months payment. That's not reasonable here. Usually you ask for up to 3 months, no more than that. And it's usually 2 months for rent and 1 month for the calção. I can't remember the name in English now.
Yeah.
And even lots of people only ask for 1 or 2 rents. So asking for 4-6 months rent, it's something that landlords only do to tourists and foreigners, and not really a practice here.
Yes.
So don't really accept that, because that's not good for anyone, and you will be stuck with something. And if the landlord isn't honest and start giving you trouble, you will be stuck there.
Yes, good advice. So much good advice coming from you this morning. Thank you. Paul's talking to Wolfgang. Have you considered the Portuguese islands? Selling prices are still cheaper than the mainland. What do you think? Good or bad? Madeira, Azores?
I think there are amazing locations. And I actually haven't gone there yet, but I wouldn't be able to tell you too much about the local markets because I haven't visited yet. So it's definitely somewhere I do want to go, and a lot of my family has been there.
Yeah.
So I think it's amazing places when it comes to nature and overall landscape. And yes, there are some low prices because, you know, it's kind of far away from everything, and there's really no big cities there. So it's a bit of more of a country life. So it's not for everyone. And I think that's why the prices haven't risen so much there.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. And it's 4 minutes to 10 now. Can you stay with us a bit longer? The questions are still coming in. Fantastic. Thank you, Anna. I appreciate it. Because when we first talked, I think we were both thinking, I wonder, you know, it might be 30 minutes, probably 20 or 30 minutes. But here we are, inundated with questions. Can you have a main home where you live permanently in the Algarve and a second home in Porto? Look at you, Gemini, just to have short holidays. How does that Portuguese tax work on that? Can that be an advantageous position, or can you turn it around?
Yeah, what happens is there are several different tax rates depending on what the purpose of the house is. So if you're buying a house for your own personal residence, the tax rates will be tier 1, so to say, so the lowest one, because it's for personal use. And then you have the tier 2 that's still residential, but for not for you, so second home. So if you do that, you are perfectly free to do that, but you will pay tier 2 taxes on the transaction.
There you go, Gemini. If you want to hedge against the falling dollar, just buy Bitcoin. We always have to have a Bitcoin comment pretty much on every show. Thank you, Bian. Victoria saying, tricky situation, having to prove accommodation for Portuguese visa application and never having seen a property in person. Well, it sounds like Anna can do that sort of thing for you. What about around the Gold Coast? That's Australia, isn't it? Says, what are we? Are we talking about the Silver Coast possibly? And I think we've touched on that already, haven't we? With Obidos and Caldas de Rainha, Peniche and Nazaré, if that's what you mean, Melinda. Come and join us in the land of the falconer. Many pluses, people. I've not heard Portugal referred to as the land of the falconer, but that's a very beautiful image, particularly of central Portugal, isn't it? What's your view of the housing market around Caldas and Bombaral? Asked Kate. Bombaral, we haven't mentioned Bombaral. What do you think of Bombaral, Anna?
In Bombaral things are cheaper, but I'm actually not sure of how much foreign occupation there is there. But overall, the prices are rather low. I think it's not that much of a popular location, so you can still find things at, you know, decent prices. But overall, I think it will be similar to Caldas. If the agency is specialized in expats, likely the prices will be inflated.
Okay, watch out for that. Marcos, chip again, Portuguese Marcos, Peso de Regua and Lamego in the Douro Valley have very good infrastructure, worth knowing. Thank you. And look, a little bit more about you personally, judging from the pentagram on the pillow. Wiccan, you don't have to answer that. You might like to.
Yeah, I actually kind of an alternative person. I love alternative fashion and I kind of go a bit on the goth sides.
Yeah.
And I try to tone it down a bit for business. But yeah, I actually love that kind of stuff. And I love all the kinds of alternative and creepy decor. So don't get scared.
Well, have to turn it down here. We love people as they are here on the Good Morning Portugal community. East side of Portugal, property cheap as chips. Now, that's true, Paul. Going over to Castelo Branco, to the Spanish border. Do you know that area very much, Anna? Would you make that sort of recommendation? It's a similar vibe, isn't it, to what you were talking about with Alentejo and Adora? You're still going to get those less than 50k properties there. Worth investing in?
I think it's all down to research. There, as everywhere, there's also always people that try to, get the most for in their pockets. But of course, that will have a lot more success in places where there's high demand from foreigners, and places that are less known and less sought after. That will happen less because it's less successful. So it's basically pretty much how it works.
Okay, excellent. I'm going to focus on the area questions now. Will you come back another time, Anna, to deal with more of the sort of specifics? Okay, fantastic. So let's today, so she's not here all then, so that we're not all of us all here all day. Let's focus on the best areas. So thanks so much. This is incredibly helpful, says Mark. What are your thoughts on the Comporta area? What areas around Comporta have the most opportunity? I don't know that personally. Do you, Anna?
Actually, I don't know it personally, but I know Comporta is fairly popular within the Portuguese high classes, so I would say the prices are a bit higher there.
Okay, all right. A brief analysis there. Love the energy sensitivity along with the business savvy from Donna. I think you'll have a lot of fans on that basis. Yeah, Penny's the same with you there on the energy vibrations, Anna. Katrina, we'll come back to your sort of question in a further episode when we talk about specifics on property. Antonio F is here. I hope he's forgiven me for my terrible Portuguese spelling. When checking out a place in the Douro Valley, they failed to mention there was a couple living on the land for free for 40 years, already taking care of the land. I just couldn't make an offer because of that. Oh, come on, free elderly couple with the purchase. Why would you turn that down? Taking care of the land there, but that's a very quaint and probably not an unusual thing in Portugal, right? Oh, we didn't mention the people living down the bottom there.
That's actually a very tricky situation, and I know about the situation very well because, well, I have family property that have contracts that come from my great-grandfather, and I do not advise to buy properties in these kind of situations, because if they are living there for 40 years without paying rent, it means they can claim the property from themselves. I don't remember the exact name of the law, but there's basically an occupation law that if you stay there for long enough and no one puts you out, then you can claim that place for yourself. And
Yes.
I don't know how long the period is, but it's something like 15 years. So they're probably having trouble with that and trying to get rid of it. Or they actually have a rental contract, but it's something like made 50 years ago. And for contracts made before, I don't know the exact date now, they can't be terminated, because the person is protected, especially if they are elderly. So you will be basically buying something with persons that you cannot get out of there.
And
That's
quite rightly,
tricky.
yeah, quite rightly, they should be protected and have some right on the land. I think if they've been there for 15 years or more, or 40 in this case. Is this normal, says Björn? I really couldn't be the person kicking them out. Quite right. I'm glad to hear that, Björn. And with your Bitcoin wealth, presumably you can buy one of those 3 million places down in the Algarve. Anyway, Dory, are there ways to get out of a rental lease if there's a major problem with an apartment, especially a concern for those renting from afar? Yeah, so I think, Doreen, Anna's available to give that, and as are others. Talk to Peter and Alice also in our business directory, and our rent-to-own options becoming more available. This is very interesting to people. Are you seeing that more and more in the Portuguese market, or is that just another way of people saying, yeah, I'll do that just to get the sale through?
I'm sorry, you have to repeat the question because I got lost somewhere.
the rent to own option. I didn't put that right.
Okay.
I see that there's more of that happening in Portugal, but is it just a way of people speeding along the rental thing? Yeah, well, yeah, we can do that. We can do that. Is it just a way of sweetening up the deal, or is there a growing market in this rent to own thing?
And the rent to own thing, there's two ways to go around that. You either make a rental contract with a deadline that you have to buy within, I don't know, 5 years, or it's just a regular rental contract, and then it will be just an empty promise.
Yes, I thought as much. I thought as much. Thank you for your additional comments, Lisa, boys, and really appreciate those. Invest a month, discover the dividends of a better life. Gary's with me on this thing of come to Portugal for a month for sure. To base camp in Coimbra, have a look around, talk to people like Anna, and you really get a feel for it if you possibly can. First, we plan to renovate a ruin, and we found an idyllic place. But think about planning and renovation can take a long time, between 1.5 and 5 years. So too long. We think for our age, we would advise renovation for younger people. I think that's a realistic grasp, isn't it? I mean, it always takes longer, doesn't it? And you'll know this. Everything takes longer, and you have your kind of honeymoon rose-tinted glasses on about renovation. You have to be practical about this, don't you?
Yeah, and renovation can be a lot of headaches, and I'm telling you that because one of my goals right now, and one of the reasons I founded this business, is because I want to get enough money to self-fund the renovation of my father's birth home in the village he grew in, and that's a pre-16th century stone estate with a huge terrain, and I have a project for it, for a bird-watching charm hotel, and the overall cost of that is 1.6 million. And we did try to renovate part of it. It was the cellar part, and I can tell you that did not go too well. So that's my father overseen that. And the property that was renovated about 10 years ago, and we have a lot of problems with humidity. There's literally walls that turn green. So I'd say be very, very careful with the renovations. And my father, he was a lovely person, but he was that kind of person that agreed to anything just so he wouldn't have to argue. So he wasn't very good at negotiating contracts, and it didn't end up well for him in a lot of cases, and the renovation of that house was one of them. So when you are doing renovations, you really have to do an airtight contract. I do advise you, before you do the renovation, to consult with an engineer and for him to go over the necessary materials and processes to properly renovate the place. And then make a contract with a contractor and specify the materials and deadlines and set fines for not keeping them.
Wow. Okay, your dad sounds like a lovely guy. God rest his soul.
He was.
You're in the business now and bringing this new ethic and approach, Anna. It's so good to hear. It really is. I love what you're doing in the Portuguese property business here, Andy. The former doctor, or maybe it's like being an American president. Once you've been a doctor, you're always a doctor. I am with you, Reiki and the science. I'm glad to hear that, Doc. That's very reassuring. Is there any tax on cryptocurrency gains in Portugal at the moment? I think not, Ali. It's like a government playing catch up. They don't really understand it, but they will. Don't worry about that. They will. As a landlord, we can get higher rental prices because of the military base. I didn't know there was a military base in Terceira, renting to the Americans rather than the locals. Yeah, I guess that's a nice little niche for you there, Donna. I didn't realize American democracy stretched that far into Portugal like that. Alvazra means land of the falconer in its history. Oh, okay, excellent. What do you think of Portimão, Praia de Rocha? Says Victoria. I mean, you said before Portimão is going to be a bit more expensive compared to other parts. What about Praia de Rocha?
Actually, when I had the house in Algarve, it was in Portimão, and I lived there for 3 years. So I can tell you quite a bit about it. So Portimão is the second biggest city in the Algarve, and it's one of the cities that still has a lot of local, and it's one of the cities that has still more year-round, employment, because in Algarve, generally, lots of things work with tourism. So It's very common to have things open for 6 months or 7 during the summer and then close down for the rest. So it kind of dies out in the winter. It does happen in Portimão. There's a huge difference on the summer and on the winter, but there's also still a lot of local life. Personally, I don't think it's a very attractive or beautiful city. If I was coming from abroad to enjoy my time and buy a vacation home, I probably wouldn't choose Portimão. There's much more beautiful areas to live in. But in terms of practicality, it is good. Like it has schools and it has all the support of the medium-sized city.
Fantastic. Great input. Sorry, did you mention Praia da Rocha there?
Yeah, Praia da Rocha is a nice place to be on vacation, but it does get very crowded on the summer. But then again, doesn't all the Algarve?
Of course, if it's got Praia in it, that's going to be a bit of a clue, isn't it?
Yes.
I think as well. What Hank was asking about your pentagram, beautiful. He says every witch I've ever known has been a wonder person. The only reason I asked, just curious. Thanks. Not a problem, Hank.
It's a pillow.
It's just a pillow. Thank you, Anna from Gemini, for great information. Thank you, Carl. I'll be watching future shows for answers. All your shows are very informative. Thank you, Katrina. This law, uso capião, after 25 years. Carl,
Yes, there you go.
There you go. Marco Comporta is an international jet set secret, and prices are off the charts. There are some incredible properties there. Thank you, Marco. Just going into our concluding comments now and questions possibly. That's 15 years. Yeah, capião, uso capião. Hannah Downing in the UK, ability to claim the land if you've lived undisturbed for 18 years is called the adverse possession. I've got a lot of sympathy, I must say, for. There's a German principle, isn't there? Usufrucht. You know, the person who uses something owns it. I mean, that would be a revolution in the way we see things, wouldn't it? Mike Campion, do you carry out full renovations on behalf of customers? So are you a contractor as well, Anna?
No, I'm not a contractor, but like I said, I include in my service consultation and screening for contracts, and otherwise, just giving advice and helping you with the process. And for up to 6 months after the scripture is made. And I do basically, since I'm location independent, I include a certain amount of travel in my services, and I do have fixed fees. I have 3 tiers. So the amount of travel is proportional to the tier you are buying in, and in the lowest one, so the cheaper one, it's 600 kilometers. And if you use up all that travel when doing the purchase, then you would have to pay extra if you want me to go and check something for the renovation. If not, it will pass on for later if you want to get me to check on something on the renovation or screening the contractors.
What a smart approach. You really have thought about this. Fantastic. Warehouse hunting, says Kate, and I suspect all the prices vendors are asking are gringo prices. Do Portuguese people get insulted if English residents make an offer that is 20% lower? Yeah, this is
probably not, but they will be disappointed.
Yes, they will be disappointed. Maybe you can manage that process there, Kate, with a coffee and a cake or something like that.
Because it's very common for people to ask more than they know it's likely to sell for. So negotiating, it's not something that people would be offended by.
So insulted, no. Disappointed, possibly. Correcting myself is uso capião. And there are several timelines from 5 to 20 years. Antonio, I love your rigor. Thank you for that update on that particular law. Obrigado to Marcos. It looks amazing. Yeah, Marcos was saying that Praia da Rocha, he was singing the praises of Praia da Rocha anyway. Thanks for answering my question, Ali. Appreciate it. Not at all. That's what we're here for this morning with Ana Caramujo of Savvy Cat Realty. And we're just finding out exactly how savvy she is this morning. It's been great talking to you. People are talking about a little earthquake in Lisbon this morning. Felt a shake here too a few minutes ago. Oh, I say. Love to hear year-round aspect of Portimão. So yes, she's glad to hear that it's a proper sort of year-long city rather than just a tourist place by the sound of it. I would leave the Algarve for the summer. That's a good strategy. Head up, talk to Anna about one of her properties in Porto, perhaps. What would you suggest, Anna, if you want to rent out instead of alojamento local. Do you help people with that sort of thing? Do you help people set up
Yeah,
rent?
I actually highly advise that. Alojamento local can be profitable, but it is not that safe because the market can be variable, and as we can see now from COVID, it can be not the best option for someone looking for return. So by doing long-term rentals, your immediate profit may be lower, but it's much safer on the long term. And if you play safe, and if you play smart and buy a property for a good price, I think it's a great option because if you did buy a property for a good price, the chances are you are able to sell it for the same price of higher if you do desire to do so later on. And by doing long-term rental, you still get an income, you get a lot less headaches, and over maybe not 10 years, but over maybe 15 or 20 years, it will still pay itself. So I think it's a great thing to do if you are thinking more long-term.
There you go, Johnny. Perfect. Thank you for that answer. This is very specific, Anna. Did the plans go ahead in Caldas to renovate the old hospital and the casino near the park?
No, that's still on hold, and I can tell you why. As you know, Caldas was actually a thermal, a hot spring area.
Yes.
And the hot spring got a bacteria that they still haven't been able to get rid of. And they have been trying very hard for years, but for some reason they just can't seem to get rid of that bacteria. And that's why the thermal and the hospital hasn't been renovated yet, because they want to, rehabilitate the hot spring, but there's still the bacteria there. So that's probably why the things are kind of in limbo.
Gary, how good is Anna? You ask a really specific question like that, and she even knows the answer to that. And that accounts for sometimes a sulfurous smell in Caldas as well, doesn't it? You get that thermal sulfurous atmosphere sometimes, so you have to be prepared.
I actually never noticed that, but I guess it depends on the area.
Yes, but that park, seriously, go to Caldas, go to that park. It's absolutely beautiful, and there's an amazing restaurant in that park, which our family really loved. Let's face it, saying I really love how frank and honest Anna is. It's so refreshing. It really is. I'll definitely reach out to her for services when coming to Portugal. That's fantastic. There's a film, a true story, says Adrian, called Hampstead, whereby a bloke camping on unused land in Hampstead in London successfully claimed ownership after living there for 20 years or so. It's a rom-com, so stick that on your Netflix list if you need something to watch. Thanks so much, Anna. Antonio did feel a little shake. Yes, the earthquake in Lisbon this morning. My goodness. Thank you so much for the valuable information, says Anna. It was only a 3.4, and Antonio's brushing it off there. Very weak. Nothing to us people in Lisbon. I really like Anna's talking points. A lot better than all these best friends real estate agents I had to deal with over the past few months. As bien. Marcos, we must subir Montalegre. I have hot springs as well. Yeah, hot springs all over the place. Just down the road from me, Korea. Termash Hotel, fantastic place. Agree. Yeah, I'm sold. Mrs. Hank and I will be in touch with Anna. You're great. So I think we should leave it there for this morning. And I will completely concur with that comment. It's been wonderful talking to you, Anna. And I really do like how you go about this, what you're bringing, I think, to the revolution in Portuguese property sales and rentals, your outlook, your attitude, your approach to this. Very inspirational and very needed. So last comments to you. What else would you like to say before we finish off? What might we have missed?
Actually, I didn't go over the main thing I wanted to go over, and that's the best locations, I think, to live. It is to live long-term for families in Portugal, and I think those would be the medium-sized cities and the surroundings of them. And actually, I think you are doing exactly that. So you are in the surroundings of Aveiro. So Aveiro is definitely one of my favorite options. So I would say Aveiro, Guimarães, Braga, Coimbra, Évora are great choices. Or even here Caldas, but honestly Caldas is a bit more less culturally active. It does have the university and has good points to it. But I think those locations are great for long-term living, and especially families, because it's easy to get education access, and you get pretty much everything you need nearby.
Tremendous. I think I need to make a little edit and make that that little list available to people. That's really great. Thank you so much for being here today, Anna, and we look forward to having you back again sometime soon. Have a great
you.
day. Ciao,
You
ciao.
too. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye for now.